Alexander Gray had built his empire from nothing but ambition, discipline, and an almost ruthless devotion to his work. The world knew him as a powerful man, a millionaire CEO who had conquered industries and markets with his sharp intellect and relentless drive. He had every material thing a man could want: penthouse apartments, sleek cars, and a reputation that made competitors tremble. Yet, beneath all that power, Alexander carried something the world didn't see: the weight of loneliness and grief. His wife had passed away during childbirth, leaving him with a baby girl named Emily. He adored her in his own way, but he never quite knew how to connect with her. Numbers, contracts, and boardrooms, those he understood. The fragile cries of a baby, that he did not. On a rainy afternoon, Alexander found himself in a situation he had never prepared for. He had taken Emily with him after his nanny had called in sick. He thought it would be simple: stop by a cafe, grab a coffee, handle some calls, and keep the baby distracted. But babies rarely follow plans. The moment he entered the small corner cafe, Emily began to cry. Not a soft whimper, but a loud, restless wail that filled the room and made every head turn. Customers shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Some shot irritated glances, others whispered. Alexander, always polished and composed in business meetings, suddenly felt like the most powerless man in the room. He rocked Emily awkwardly in his arms, muttered words he hoped would soothe her, and checked her bottle, but nothing worked. The cries only grew louder. Behind the counter, a young waitress named Lily Parker noticed the scene. She was in her early 20s, wearing a worn apron that had seen better days. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her shoes had lost some of their shine from too many double shifts. Yet, her eyes carried a warmth that money couldn't buy. Lily was no stranger to struggle. She worked 2 jobs to support her ill mother and younger brother. Life had never been easy for her, but she had learned to find strength in kindness. As Emily's cries pierced the air, Alexander's frustration turned to embarrassment. He muttered under his breath about incompetent help and wasted time, unaware that his words carried to the ears of those around him. He wasn't trying to be cruel, he was simply a man used to control, now stripped of it in front of strangers. Finally, Lily stepped forward. Her heart tugged at the sight of the red-faced baby. "Sir," she said softly, her voice cutting through the noise without judgment, "may I try?" Alexander looked up, startled. "What, your baby?" Lily said gently, meeting his eyes. "Sometimes, they just need a different kind of comfort." "May I?" For a moment, Alexander hesitated. He was not a man who trusted easily. Handing over his daughter to a stranger in a cafe felt absurd. But desperation overruled pride. Emily's cries were unbearable, and his nerves were fraying. With a reluctant sigh, he handed the baby to Lily. The transformation was immediate. Lily cradled Emily with practiced ease, rocking her gently and humming a soft tune under her breath. The baby's wails began to soften, her little fists unclenching as she gazed up at Lily's calm face. Within minutes, the restless crying turned into quiet hiccups, and then, astonishingly, into peaceful silence. The entire cafe seemed to exhale with relief. Alexander stared in disbelief. He, with all his power and resources, had been unable to calm his daughter. Yet this poor waitress, a stranger, had done the unthinkable in a matter of moments. "See," Lily whispered to Emily, smiling down at the baby. "You just needed someone to listen." For the first time in a long while, Alexander felt something unfamiliar. Humility. Alexander Gray could not get the image out of his mind. His daughter, once restless and inconsolable, nestled peacefully in the arms of a cafe waitress. The sound of Lily's gentle humming had lingered in his ears even after he had left that day. For a man who measured everything in terms of efficiency, strategy, and control, the moment had shaken him. He was not used to feeling powerless, nor was he accustomed to needing help from anyone, especially a stranger who earned in a month what he spent on a single dinner meeting. Yet, he could not deny what had happened. Lily had done what he could not. In the days that followed, Alexander found excuses to return to the cafe. Sometimes he came with Emily, sometimes alone. He told himself it was convenient, close to his office, but deep down, he knew there was more to it. He wanted to see the waitress who had calmed his daughter with nothing more than patience and a kind heart. Each time he entered, Lily greeted him with the same warm smile she gave every customer. She never treated him like the millionaire CEO everyone else whispered about. To her, he was simply Mr. Gray, with a baby who needed attention. At first, Alexander bristled at her casual kindness. He was used to deference, to people leaning forward eagerly when he spoke. But Lily never tried to impress him. She only cared about whether Emily was comfortable. Over time, Alexander began to notice things about Lily he hadn't before. The way she stayed late after closing, wiping down tables with tired but steady hands. The way her smile sometimes faltered when she thought no one was looking, replaced by a shadow of exhaustion. One evening, he overheard her talking quietly to a coworker about her mother's medical bills. The burden she carried was heavy, yet she never allowed bitterness to harden her. Instead, she poured herself into small acts of kindness, remembering regular customers' favorite drinks, offering encouraging words, and of course, cradling Emily with the gentleness of someone who knew pain but chose compassion anyway. Emily, too, began to recognize Lily. The moment they entered the cafe, the baby would brighten, her tiny arms reaching out eagerly. Alexander felt a pang each time. It was Lily, not him, who drew those smiles. At first, jealousy pricked his pride. But gradually, he began to understand. Lily was teaching him something he had never learned in boardrooms or negotiations. Love was not about control. It was about presence. One particularly rainy evening, when the cafe was nearly empty, Alexander found himself seated across from Lily. Emily was asleep in her stroller, her chest rising and falling peacefully. For the first time, Alexander spoke not as a CEO, but as a man stripped of his armor. "How do you do it?" he asked quietly. Lily looked up from the table she was wiping. "Do what?" "Calm her," he said, nodding toward Emily. "You make it look so easy." Lily smiled faintly. "It's not about easy. Babies feel what we feel. If we're restless, they're restless. Sometimes they don't need answers, they just need someone to sit with them in the storm until it passes." Her words struck him more deeply than any speech he had heard at a business conference. Alexander realized that he had been approaching fatherhood like another corporate problem, something to solve quickly, efficiently. But Emily didn't need a problem solver. She needed a father who would stay with her, even in the storm. That night, Alexander returned to his penthouse and tried something different. When Emily cried, instead of calling for the nanny or pacing impatiently, he sat in the rocking chair and simply held her. At first, it felt awkward. His suit felt stiff, his arms unsure. But slowly, as he whispered softly and let himself simply be there, Emily's cries softened. For the first time, he felt the fragile, indescribable bond of presence. He thought of Lily's words, "Sit with them in the storm," and tears stung his eyes. He realized he had not only lost his wife but had also been running from grief, burying himself in work and wealth while neglecting the very soul who needed him most. The days turned into weeks. Alexander continued to visit the cafe, not out of necessity, but because something about that place, and about Lily, was helping him heal. He learned more about her life, her mother's illness, her brother's schooling, the sacrifices she made daily. Despite her struggles, Lily radiated a strength that humbled him. She was poor in material wealth but rich in what truly mattered: compassion, resilience, and love. One evening, when the cafe was about to close, Lily received a phone call that made her hands tremble. Her mother's condition had worsened, and the hospital bill was beyond what she could afford. She tried to hide her tears, but Alexander noticed. For a man who had once measured everything in profit and loss, the decision that followed surprised even him. Quietly, anonymously, he arranged for the bill to be paid in full. When Lily discovered what had happened, she was overwhelmed. She confronted him gently, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. Alexander's voice was unsteady. "Because you reminded me what kindness looks like. And because you've given Emily more than I ever could. You gave her love when I didn't know how." Lily shook her head. "You're learning, Mr. Gray. Love isn't about perfection, it's about showing up. And you're doing that now." For the first time, Alexander smiled, not the polished, businesslike smile he wore in meetings, but a genuine, unguarded smile. He realized that Lily had not only soothed Emily's cries but had also quieted his own restless soul.